The day before our engagement party, they voted me out. Ethan had created a group chat. The name? Who should Ethan marry? I was option A, Clara, the girl who had been by his side for 15 years. The other was option B, Lily, his first love who had been waiting for him for 10 years. When the voting ended, Lily won by a landslide. Everyone in that group was someone I knew. His sister Audrey said, Clara is 30. Her biological clock is ticking, and her fertility is probably tanking. His best friend said, she's just a girl with no family. She doesn't belong in the Vance family. Even my own best friend, Chloe, cast her vote for Lily. She wrote, Clara is too stubborn. A little loss will do her some good. And that day, I was sitting in a restaurant in my evening gown, foolishly waiting for Ethan to propose, until I scrolled past a video of a wedding in Cabo. On the screen, Ethan was kissing his bride Lily. It turned out my 15 years of devotion was nothing but a betting game at their dinner table. They chose his bride for him. And in the process they voted me, his fiancée of 15 years, completely out of his life. My fingers shook. I could barely hold my iPad. My chest tightened, and cold sweat broke out across my back. My phone buzzed. An email notification popped up. Your resignation has been successfully submitted. I stared at the words, running my fingers through my hair in frustration. I had sent that application at noon today. At the time, a bouquet of flowers from Ethan was sitting right next to my hand. Actually, he had been trying to persuade me to quit for years. He said his company had just gone public and he needed someone he could trust. He said no matter how hard I worked at my current job, I was just making someone else rich. My best friend Chloe had pressured me too. Clara, you don't have parents. Ethan is the only family you have left. You're lucky to have him. Don't take it for granted. Even Ethan's sister Audrey had smiled and patted my hand. You're going to be a Vance sooner or later. Working for the family business is safer than staying outside. But I had always hesitated. My job was my security. I couldn't put all my eggs in one basket. But this afternoon Ethan called me. On your 30th birthday, I'm going to make things right between us. I really need you by my side. My future only makes sense with you. I believed him. So I submitted my resignation. I threw away 7 years of hard work, a year-end promotion, and my only safety net. And now, the group chat on my iPad was flooded with photos of Ethan's wedding. They had chosen his wife and they had decided my fate. I bent over, dry heaving, a metallic taste of bile rising in my throat. Just then, I saw Chloe post in the group chat. I've kept Clara distracted. She's probably still waiting for her surprise at the restaurant. Someone replied, getting dumped on her birthday? Do you think she'll do something crazy? Audrey posted a laughing emoji. She'll throw a tantrum for a couple of days at most. Once Ethan sweet talks her and gives her a job at his company, she'll crawl right back. Staring at the screen, I couldn't take it anymore. I rushed to the bathroom and threw up. I hadn't eaten anything all day, saving my appetite for the birthday dinner. My stomach was completely empty. I threw up nothing but stomach acid, burning my throat. Gripping the sink, my tears mixed with cold sweat as they dripped down. The woman in the mirror was pale. Her lipstick was smudged, and her carefully curled hair was a messy ruin. Looking at my reflection, I suddenly felt like a stranger. Did Clara, at 30 years old, really lose everything? My screen lit up with an incoming call from Ethan. Looking at his name, a suffocating darkness pressed down on me. Just before the call timed out, I picked up. Clara, I'm so sorry. An overseas project came up last minute, and my phone died. You're not mad, right? My voice was hoarse. No. He let out a low chuckle. I remember that necklace you liked last time. I'll buy it for you as soon as I get back from this business trip. I used to melt when he talked to me like this. But now, his voice overlapped with the image of him kissing Lily in that wedding video. My stomach churned, and I dug my fingernails deep into my palms. Did you submit your resignation? He asked. Don't worry. Come to my company. I'll take care of you. I clenched my teeth, forcing my voice to sound steady. I submitted it. He let out a sigh of relief on the other end. Good girl. I've got you. Just as he finished speaking, a female voice drifted over from the background. Ethan, the photographer says we need to retake the shots in the red dress. It was soft sweet. I slowly crouched down, wrapping my arms around my shaking body. Ethan lowered his voice. Babe, I have to run. I have some work to finish. I'll call you later, okay? I heard myself say, okay. After the line went dead, the only sound in the room was the rain outside. Sitting on the floor, I saved the chat logs, the poll, and the screenshots of the wedding video. Then, I dialed my director's number. Mr. Bennett, is it too late to withdraw my resignation? I stared at the group chat that didn't include me. My voice shook, but I forced out every single word. Also, about the relocation project you mentioned last time. I'll take it. I didn't sleep at all that night. I went through my phone, deleting every single photo related to them. 15 years of memories took only a few hours to wipe clean. By the end, my camera roll was practically empty. I stared at the blank screen for a long time before getting up to pack my things. So much of what I owned was tied to them, and so much of it should have been thrown away a long time ago. I opened my closet to pack my suitcase. My fingers paused instinctively on a gray scarf. When I was 14, my parents passed away. None of my relatives wanted to take me in. I had sat on the steps, crying until I couldn't breathe. Ethan had knelt in front of me, wrapping this very scarf around my neck. He had said, "Clara, from now on, my home is your home." After that, he spent every single birthday with me. At 18, he baked me a small cake himself. At 22, we celebrated over sushi. At 26, when his startup failed, he held me close and promised that when he made it, he would give me the grandest 30th birthday imaginable. But on my 30th birthday, he was in Cabo, giving that grand moment to another woman. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Ethan stood at the front of the group, holding a cake and a bouquet of white roses. Chloe peeked out from behind him, smiling as if nothing had happened. "Clara. Surprise. I went to the next town with my family yesterday and got you these scented candles." Audrey handed me a gift box as well. "You've been so busy lately that you forgot your own birthday. Here's a little something." A few mutual friends squeezed into the apartment, tossing balloons and confetti around the living room. "Why the long-faced birthday girl? We're here to celebrate." Looking at the crowd in front of me, their faces suddenly overlapped with the video from last night. They were talking, but I couldn't hear a word. Only the comments from the group chat echoed in my ears. "She'll throw a tantrum for a couple of days at most. Once Ethan sweet-talks her, she'll crawl right back." Ethan opened a velvet jewelry box. Inside lay a diamond necklace. He stepped forward to put it on me, his fingers brushing against the back of my neck just like they always did. "Babe, I was really too busy yesterday. Don't be mad anymore. Come work at my company, and we can be together every day." As the cold metal touched my skin, I felt suffocated. I ripped it off and tossed it back into the box. Chloe's smile froze. "Clara, that's enough. Everyone came all this way to make it up to you. Why are you acting like this? Audrey sighed. You're 30 years old. Stop throwing childish tantrums." I looked up at them, my throat burning. "Are you done putting on a show?" The living room fell dead silent. I asked word by word, "Was the wedding in Cabo beautiful?" Chloe's face drained of color, but she quickly frowned. "Since you already know, why didn't you just ask? Did you have to be so passive-aggressive and make things awkward for everyone?" Another friend chimed in. "Lily has been waiting for Ethan for 10 years. It hasn't been easy for her either." "So what if you've been with him for 15 years? Love isn't a ticket queue where you wait for your turn." I wanted to laugh, but my lips were trembling too violently. Ethan reached out to grab my hand. "Clara, stop acting out. Lily and I only had a ceremony. We didn't sign any legal papers." My head snapped up. I saw exhaustion in his eyes, but also absolute certainty. "I promised I'd give you a commitment when you turned 30. I didn't forget. If you want, we can go register our marriage tomorrow." She wanted the wedding, but you get the marriage. I gave her the ceremony, and I'm giving you the legal papers. That way nobody loses. My ears rang. A surge of pure rage erupted in my chest. The sheer absurdity of it almost made me laugh out loud. Ethan softened his voice. "Clara, you don't have a family. That's why I can't leave you. You've already quit your job. Who's going to spend your birthdays with you? Who's going to pick you up from work? Who's going to take care of you when you're sick?" His voice was gentle, but every word was a calculated reminder that I had absolutely nothing. I looked at the room full of balloons, the gifts, and the cold necklace. My eyes stung, but I refused to let the tears fall. I took a slow step back, dodging Ethan's outstretched hand. He frowned. "Clara." I looked at him, my voice barely a whisper. "You're right. It's time I find myself a real home." Without another look at Ethan, I walked past the balloons and gifts, heading straight for the door. Chloe rushed after me and grabbed my arm. "Clara, where are you going?" "Everyone rushed back from Cabo without even eating just to throw you a party. What more do you want?" Her nails dug into my wrist, leaving a sharp, burning pain. I shook her off and pushed the door open. As the door clicked shut, I heard someone mutter inside. "It was just a ceremony. Does she really need to throw such a fit?" The elevator plummeted. In the reflection of the metal doors, my face was ghostly pale, with a red mark on my neck from where I had ripped the necklace off. I blocked Ethan, Chloe, and all our mutual friends on Snapchat. When I reached the office, the receptionist looked at me in surprise. "Clara? Didn't you take today off?" I replied, just sorting out a few things. I walked straight into Mr. Bennett's office. He pushed the relocation agreement toward me. "The San Francisco project is urgent. If you sign this, you leave next week." I gripped the pen, my fingers still trembling. As I finished signing my name, the pen tip ripped a tiny tear in the paper. Staring at the tear, I finally let out a breath. That afternoon, I began handing over my responsibilities. My phone kept buzzing in my bag. I ignored it. Eventually, my assistant, Mia, walked in with a cup of coffee. She stood frozen at the door. Clara, have you seen what's online? She handed me her phone. On the screen was a new video from the influencer who had posted the Cabo wedding. The dream wedding update. The groom's toxic ex of 15 years drives the bride to tears. In the video, Lily was wearing her wedding gown, her eyes red as she snuggled into Ethan's chest. The voiceover sounded furious. Word has it that the groom took care of his family-less ex out of sheer charity. But she refused to let go for years, even going as far as to harass them after their wedding. The comment section was flooded. Just because you don't have parents doesn't mean you can steal someone else's husband. That woman is pure evil. My fingers felt too cold to scroll. Below that, Chloe had reposted it on Instagram. I've known her for years. All I can say is some people really take other people's kindness for granted. Audrey had posted too. My brother is too soft-hearted, which is why he let this drag on for so long. I hope a certain someone finally lets go of two people who are truly in love. My stomach violently spasmed. I ran into the restroom, gripping the sink as I dry-heaved. In the mirror, my eyes were bloodshot, and my lips had lost all color. Outside, I could hear whispering. That's Clara, right? She looks so normal. How could she harass someone for 15 years? I turned on the faucet, letting the rushing water drown out their voices. But every single word still pierced my ears. After collecting myself, I went back to the conference room to continue the handover. But by the third page, my voice gave out completely. Mia handed me some water. The glass clicked against my teeth. I took a sip and kept going. I couldn't stop. After the meeting, Mr. Bennett called me into his office. A few anonymous emails were open on his desk. Clara, the San Francisco team, received a complaint. Someone claims you are emotionally unstable and involved in personal drama, making you unfit for relocation. I stood there, the cold seeping into my bones. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Clara, stop fighting it. See, without me you have nothing. When I walked out of his office, my legs were so weak I nearly crashed into the glass door. I could always find another job. But my ID, contracts, and the old metal box left by my parents were still at the house I shared with Ethan. I had to get them. When the elevator doors opened at the apartment, I heard the sound of cardboard boxes scraping against the floor. The living room was crowded. Chloe, Audrey, and Lily, who was wearing a white dress, were all there. The movers were shoving my clothes into black trash bags. Chloe was holding my gray scarf with disgust. My voice sounded horribly hoarse. Who gave you permission to touch my things? Lily turned around, her eyes instantly welling with tears. Clara, please don't misunderstand. Ethan said you've been unstable lately, so I just wanted to help you pack. She stroked the back of the sofa. I'm going to be living here now. We can't keep your old things around forever. A heavy blow struck my chest. Every lamp, every cup in this apartment had been carefully chosen by Ethan and me. I used to think this was my home. It turned out I had just overstayed my welcome, forgetting that the landlord could kick me out at any moment. Chloe scoffed, tossing the scarf into a box. Clara, did you really think this was your house? Did you actually think we were your family? Those words crashed down on me, turning my world black for a second. When I was 14, standing in front of my parents' graves, it had felt exactly this cold. Then Ethan came along, and I thought I wasn't alone anymore. I gripped the shoe cabinet, my nails digging into the wood. Put my things down. Nobody listened. Audrey frowned. Clara, stop throwing a fit. Lily was kind enough to help you pack. You should be grateful. Lily suddenly pulled an old metal box out of a drawer. Do you want this too? My pupils dilated. I lunged forward. Don't touch that. Inside were my parents' photos, my birth certificate, and the last birthday card my mother had ever written to me. Chloe stepped in front of me, sneering. They've been dead for years. Why keep this depressing junk? During the scuffle, the metal box knocked loose and slammed onto the floor. Photos scattered everywhere. Someone's shoe stepped right on my mother's face. A loud buzzing filled my ears. I shoved Chloe aside and fell to my knees to gather them. Lily let out a soft gasp, intentionally falling backward against the glass coffee table. A piece of glass sliced her arm. Hurried footsteps echoed at the door. Ethan rushed in, his eyes immediately landing on her bleeding arm. Lily. He scooped her up, his voice trembling. Does it hurt? Kneeling amidst the broken glass and scattered photos, my own fingers were bleeding. A drop of blood dripped onto the photo of my parents. I looked up at him. They're throwing my things away. Ethan glanced at me, his eyes filled with nothing but disappointment. They're just helping you move. Clara, why do you have to push everyone to their limits? My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Lily clung to him, sobbing. Ethan, it's fine. It's only natural for Clara to hate me. Ethan held her tighter and turned to me. The drama online is getting out of hand. You need to post a statement. Tell everyone that you and I broke up a long time ago, and that you lost control of your emotions and misunderstood Lily. Suddenly I laughed. I laughed so hard my chest ached. You want me to publicly lie and say I'm the toxic ex who's been harassing you? He went silent for a moment. Just for now. I gathered the photos one by one and put them back in the box. My hands were numb with pain, but my chest felt completely hollow. Okay. Everyone froze. I stood up, cradling the metal box. I'll move. And I don't want you anymore. A torrential rain was pouring outside. The movers piled my boxes on the curb. The metal box on top wasn't fully closed, and the wind blew it open. Our family photo rolled out, drifting toward the street. I rushed to grab it. Ethan stepped forward to help. But behind him, Lily suddenly wailed. Ethan, my arm hurts so much. Ethan paused mid-step. It was just a split-second pause. But in that moment, I wondered if it would have been better if my 14-year-old self had never met him. Blinding headlights pierced through the heavy rain. The screech of brakes ripped through the street. Clutching the soaked family photo, my body was violently thrown into the air. In the darkness, I thought I heard Ethan's agonizing scream. Clara. The world did not end with a bang, but with the sickening crunch of metal against bone and the sound of cold rain splashing against my face. When my body hit the asphalt, the water in the gutter washed over my hands, diluting the blood that seeped from my scraped knuckles. I held the soaked family photo tightly against my chest, shielding my mother's face from the tires, from the rain, from the cruel world that had taken everything else from me. In the distance, through the ringing in my ears, I heard footsteps splashing frantically toward me. Clara. Clara, open your eyes. Ethan dropped to his knees in the mud. His expensive tailored suit was instantly ruined, stained with rainwater and road grime. His face was paler than I had ever seen it. His hands hovered over my trembling body, afraid to touch me, afraid that if he moved me, I would break completely. Call an ambulance. Someone call an fucking ambulance, he screamed, his voice cracking, stripped of all its usual calm superiority. Behind him, Lily stood under an umbrella, clutching her scratched arm. Ethan. My arm is bleeding again. It hurts. For 15 years, whenever Lily so much as whimpered, Ethan would drop everything to run to her side. But this time, Ethan didn't even turn his head. Shut up, he roared at Lily, his eyes bloodshot, filled with a wild, terrifying fury I had never seen in him before. Shut the hell up. I lay on the cold pavement, watching the raindrops split the yellow streetlights into fractured beams. I wanted to laugh. For 15 years, I had prayed for him to choose me over her. And now, as my blood pooled on the asphalt, he finally yelled at her. How pathetic. How utterly worthless. The sirens wailed in the distance. My vision began to blur into dark, suffocating shadows. The last thing I saw before I lost consciousness was Mr. Bennett rushing out of a black town car that had pulled up beside us. He pushed Ethan aside with a single furious shove. Get your filthy hands off my employee, Mr. Bennett's voice echoed like thunder through the storm. Then darkness swallowed me whole. I woke up 3 days later in a private ICU room. The smell of disinfectant filled the air. My left arm was in a cast, 3 of my ribs were fractured, and my body felt as if it had been systematically smashed and pieced back together. But I was alive. Sitting by my bed was Mr. Bennett, reviewing documents on his tablet. When he saw me open my eyes, his stern face softened into an expression of quiet relief. You have 2 broken ribs, a severe concussion, and a fractured radius, Mr. Bennett said calmly, handing me a glass of water with a straw. The driver was a drunk delivery driver. He took full responsibility. I took a small sip, my throat burning like fire. The photo. Mr. Bennett reached into his briefcase and pulled out a clean, dried plastic sleeve. Inside was the photo of my parents. It was wrinkled and water-stained, but their smiles were still intact. I retrieved it from the street, he said softly. Clara, you almost died for a piece of paper. It's the only thing I have left that belongs to people who actually loved me. I whispered. Tears finally leaked from the corners of my eyes, cold and silent. Mr. Bennett set the tablet down. Ethan Vance has been standing outside this ICU for 72 hours. He hasn't slept, he hasn't changed his clothes, and he refuses to leave. His sister and your former friend Chloe have come by 3 times trying to talk him into going home. I don't want to see him, I said immediately. My voice was raspy, but my resolve was solid steel. I know, Mr. Bennett replied, a sharp, cold glint in his eyes. And you won't have to. In fact, as far as Ethan Vance and the rest of the world are concerned, Clara is gone. I looked at him in confusion. The complaint to the San Francisco branch was submitted by Chloe using an anonymous server, Mr. Bennett explained. When I showed the board the video of the accident and the medical report, they didn't cancel your relocation. They authorized an immediate emergency transfer. I have officially declared to the media that you have resigned from the company and left the city to recover in isolation. Your records here have been sealed under high-level privacy. He leaned forward. Clara, if you walk out of this hospital and board that plane to San Francisco under a new corporate identity, Ethan Vance will never be able to touch your life again. You can let them believe they drove you into the abyss. And when you return, you will no longer be the orphan girl begging for his love. I looked out the window at the gray sky. The 15-year-old girl who wore Ethan's gray scarf was dead. She died in the rain on that asphalt. When does the plane leave? I asked. In 4 days, Mr. Bennett smiled faintly. Rest up. Your real life is about to begin. Outside the ICU doors, Ethan sat on the cold plastic bench, his head buried in his hands. His expensive suit was wrinkled and covered in dried mud. His chin was dark with stubble, and his eyes were bloodshot. Every time the ICU doors opened, his body jerked upright, only for his hopes to be dashed when a nurse walked past without looking at him. Ethan. Audrey's high-pitched voice echoed down the quiet hallway. She hurried over, wearing a designer dress, accompanied by Chloe and Lily. Lily's arm was wrapped in neat white gauze. She looked frail and sorrowful. Ethan, please come home. You've been here for 3 days. The doctor said Clara is out of danger. She's just being dramatic, hiding inside and refusing to see you. Ethan slowly raised his head. His gaze was so hollow and dark that Lily instinctively took a step back. Dramatic. Ethan's voice was terrifyingly quiet. She had 3 fractured ribs and internal bleeding. Lily. She was lying in her own blood. It was an accident. Chloe chimed in, defending Lily. She was the one who ran out into the street to grab some old trash. Besides, Ethan, the company's stock is dropping because of those online rumors. You need to come back and press release this. Ethan stood up slowly. Standing at 6'2", his towering shadow fell over the 3 of them. An old trash. Ethan stepped toward Chloe, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles popped. Those were the only photos of her dead parents. The photos you threw out into the rain while I stood there and let you. Chloe paled. Ethan, we were just trying to help you clear out her stuff so Lily could move in. Who gave you permission to touch her things? Ethan bellowed, his voice vibrating through the entire corridor. Several nurses rushed over to warn him, but he ignored them, staring wildly at his sister and Chloe. Who gave any of you the right to decide who stays in my house? Ethan. Audrey shouted, offended. We did it for you. The group chat voted. Everyone agreed that Lily is better for you than an orphan with no background. We saved you from making a mistake. The group chat. Ethan let out a dry, manic laugh. Tears finally streamed down his exhausted face. I created that chat as a joke among friends because I was stressed about the wedding planning. And you, my own sister, my best friend, her best friend. You used it to systematically destroy her. He turned his gaze onto Lily. Lily trembled. Ethan, you said you loved me. You gave me the wedding in. Oh. I gave you a wedding because you told me you were dying of a terminal illness. 10 years ago. Ethan shouted, revealing a secret he had buried for years. You came back 3 months ago telling me you had a miracle recovery. I felt guilty. I thought I owed you a dream before I settled down with Clara. Chloe and Audrey gasped, looking at Lily in shock. Is that true, Lily? Audrey asked, her voice faltering. You lied about being sick. Lily's face turned paper white. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Before anyone could say another word, the doors to the ICU opened. Mr. Bennett walked out, flanked by 2 security guards. Ethan rushed forward like a madman. Mr. Bennett, how is Clara? Can I see her? Please, just 5 minutes. Mr. Bennett stopped, looking at Ethan with an expression of absolute disdain. Mr. Vance, Mr. Bennett said coldly. Miss Clara has formally severed all ties with your company, your social circle, and your life. She signed a non-disclosure and protection order before being discharged. Discharged? Ethan grabbed Mr. Bennett's lapels. Where is she? Where did she go? The security guards immediately grabbed Ethan, pinning his arms behind his back and forcing him to his knees. Mr. Bennett adjusted his tie, looking down at the kneeling man. She went somewhere where nobody will ever tell her she doesn't belong, Mr. Bennett said softly. She asked me to give you a message, Ethan. Ethan looked up, his eyes filled with desperate, pitiful hope. What did she say? She said. The 15 years are paid in full. Do not look for me, or I will make sure Vance Tech burns to the ground. Mr. Bennett turned and walked away, leaving Ethan kneeling on the cold hospital floor, letting out an agonizing, soundless scream as his world crumbled into ash. San Francisco. The morning fog rolled over the Golden Gate Bridge, yielding to a brilliant, sharp sunlight. Inside the glass-walled executive suite of Bennett Capital's headquarters, I stood holding a cup of black coffee, watching the city below. 3 years. 33 years old now. The girl who used to cry over a gray scarf was long gone. In her place stood the Senior Vice President of International Acquisitions at Bennett Capital, Clara. Reed. My hair was cut into a sleek, sharp bob. I wore a tailored ivory power suit, and my eyes were clear, cold, and utterly untamed. A knock sounded at the door. My assistant, Maya, walked in with a leather-bound folder. Miss Reed, the acquisition dossier for Vance Tech has been finalized, Maya reported professionally. They are in deep trouble. Their main product line suffered a massive data breach last year. Their stock has plunged by 70%, and their chief financial officer recently fled after embezzling $15 million. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Who was their CFO? A woman named Chloe Vance, formerly Chloe Miller, Maya replied. She married Ethan Vance's cousin 2 years ago and took over the finance department. Turns out she was cooking the books the entire time. A faint, cold smile touched my lips. Poetic justice. Vance Tech CEO, Ethan Vance, arrived in San Francisco this morning, Maya continued. He has been begging for an emergency meeting with our investment committee for 3 weeks. Bennett Capital is his absolute last lifeline. If we don't inject $50 million by the end of this month, Vance Tech will file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I turned around, setting my coffee cup down with a light clink. Schedule the meeting for 2 o'clock this afternoon, I said smoothly. Tell them the senior vice president will handle the negotiations personally. Understood, Miss Reed. After Maya left, I walked over to my desk and opened the bottom drawer. Inside lay the old metal box. I opened it. My parents' photo sat safely inside, perfectly restored and framed. Beside it lay the screenshots of the group chat from 3 years ago, printed out in high resolution. I looked at the faces in those photos: Ethan, Chloe, Audrey, Lily. For 3 years, I hadn't spent a single second missing them. I had spent every waking hour building my empire, mastering corporate finance, and becoming someone who could rewrite the rules of the game. They thought I was an orphan with no family, no background, and no power. Today, I was going to show them what happens when the girl they voted out comes back to buy their entire world. At 1:55 p.m., the executive conference room on the 48th floor was filled with a tense silence. Ethan Vance sat at the long mahogany table, clutching a thick stack of restructuring proposals. Beside him sat his sister, Audrey, who now served as his PR director. She looked worn out, her designer clothes failing to mask the dark circles under her eyes and the frantic anxiety in her posture. Vance Tech was dying. Over the last 3 years, without Clara secretly managing the operations, handling the clients, and smoothing over Ethan's impulsive mistakes, the company had spiraled out of control. Ethan had aged dramatically. His temples were silvered, his face possessed a hollow, haunted look, and he wore a simple silver band on his left ring finger. A band that did not belong to Lily. Ethan, are you sure this Bennett Capital VP will see us? Audrey whispered, nervously, biting her manicured nails. I heard she's ruthless. She destroyed 3 tech firms in New York last quarter before restructuring them. She's our last chance, Audrey, Ethan said, his voice flat and exhausted. If she turns us down, the bank forecloses on the house on Monday. Where is Lily anyway? Audrey hissed angrily. Your wife should be helping you secure investors instead of spending $50,000 on vintage purses in Paris. Ethan didn't answer. A flicker of deep disgust flashed across his eyes at the mention of Lily's name. Just then, the heavy double doors of the conference room swung open. 4 executive assistants walked in first, lining up along the sides. Then came Mr. Bennett, looking distinguished in a charcoal suit. Ethan and Audrey immediately stood up, adjusting their jackets. Mr. Bennett. Ethan extended his hand eagerly. Thank you so much for giving Vance Tech this opportunity. Mr. Bennett didn't take his hand. He simply stepped aside. I am no longer handling this acquisition, Mr. Vance, Mr. Bennett said calmly. Allow me to introduce our Senior Vice President of Acquisitions. High heels clicked sharply against the marble floor. A tall, elegant woman stepped into the room. Her ivory suit fitted her perfectly, an emerald brooch pinned to her lapel, glowing with icy sophistication. She held a black Mont Blanc pen between her long, manicured fingers. She walked straight to the head of the table and sat down in the executive leather chair. When she raised her head, her sharp, hazel eyes locked onto Ethan and Audrey. Clack! Audrey's handbag dropped from her hands, crashing onto the floor. Her mouth opened wide, but no sound came out. Her face turned the color of chalk. Clara! Audrey shrieked, her voice high and terrified, as if she had just seen a ghost rising from the grave. Ethan stood frozen. His proposal document slipped from his fingers, scattering across the polished mahogany table like fallen leaves. His breath hitched in his throat, his pupils contracting to tiny pinpricks. Clara, he whispered, his voice trembling so violently it was barely audible. He took an unsteady step forward, his eyes drinking in her face, her hair, her posture. The hollow, dead look in his eyes instantly ignited into a terrifying, desperate blaze. Clara, it's really you. You're alive. You're back. I looked at him, my expression completely unbothered, as if I were looking at a stranger who had walked into the wrong room. I tapped my Mont Blanc pen against the table once. Mr. Vance, this is a formal corporate negotiation, I said, my voice smooth, elegant, and entirely devoid of heat. Please address me as Vice President Reed. Ethan stood there, shivering as if struck by lightning. Vice President Reed, he repeated, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Audrey rushed forward, trying to grasp the situation, her voice panicked and overly familiar. Clara. Oh my God, Clara. You're alive. Do you have any idea how much we searched for you? Ethan almost went crazy 3 years ago. He spent months looking for you in every hospital. Miss Vance, I interrupted her, my eyes coolly sweeping over her face. If you cannot control your personal outbursts, I will have security escort you out of Bennett Capital immediately. Audrey choked on her words. The cold, absolute authority in my tone terrified her. This was not the timid girl who used to bake cookies for her and endure her snide remarks about family lineage. Ethan forced himself to sit down, his eyes never leaving my face for even a fraction of a second. Clara. Vice President Reed. Ethan corrected himself, his hands trembling. Under the table. We didn't know you were the lead investor. It doesn't matter who the investor is. I opened the leather folder, leaning back comfortably in my chair. What matters is that Vance Tech's financial statements are an absolute disaster. I turned to page 5. Your company has a debt-to-equity ratio of over 400%. Your primary software product has 3 critical security flaws that were covered up rather than patched. And your former CFO, Chloe Miller, embezzled $15 million over 18 months through shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Ethan closed his eyes in shame. We have filed a lawsuit against Chloe. A lawsuit that will yield nothing, because she transferred the assets to her husband's offshore account 6 months ago, I said sharply. You were blind, Ethan. You let a snake run your vault because she flattered you, while you drove away the people who actually kept your company alive. Audrey couldn't help chiming in again, her tone defensive. Chloe was Clara's best friend. We trusted her because of Clara. I let out a soft, amused laugh, looking straight at Audrey. Miss Vance, 3 years ago, in a group chat called, Who Should Ethan Marry? You wrote, Clara is a girl with no family. She doesn't belong in the Vance family. The entire conference room went dead silent. The Bennett Capital executives sitting behind me looked at Audrey with cold, judgmental stares. Audrey's face flushed a deep, violent red. That was a joke. And Chloe wrote, I continued, turning a page slowly. Clara is too stubborn. A little loss will do her some good. I looked up, fixing my gaze on Ethan's pale, agonized face. So you see, Miss Vance, Chloe didn't betray Vance Tech because of me. She betrayed you because she realized that in the Vance family, loyalty is a joke. And betrayal is a currency. She simply played the game you taught her. Ethan lowered his head, pressing his palms hard against his eyes. A single tear escaped, dripping onto the glossy table. I'm sorry, Ethan choked out, his shoulders shaking. Clara, I am so sorry. Save your apologies for your creditors, Mr. Vance, I said, closing the folder. With a firm snap. Bennett Capital is willing to acquire Vance Tech. Ethan's head snapped up, a ray of desperate hope rising in his chest. You'll buy us? Yes, I smiled, a smile as cold as a winter glacier. We will acquire 90% of Vance Tech's equity for the nominal price of $1. Audrey leapt out of her chair. $1. Our company was valuation at $200 million 3 years ago. 3 years ago you had a competent operational team. Now you have a mountain of debt and a ruined reputation. I replied calmly. Upon acquisition, Ethan Vance will be stripped of his CEO position immediately. You, Audrey Vance, will be terminated without severance. And the company will be completely restructured under my direct command. You're destroying us, Audrey screamed. No, I stood up, buttoning my ivory jacket, looking down at them from my full height. I'm offering you a lifeline so you don't end up in prison for corporate bankruptcy fraud. You have until 5 p.m. to sign the agreement. If you don't. I stepped around the table, leaning down slightly near Ethan's ear. If you don't, Ethan, I will personally buy up your bank loans tonight and foreclose on your house by tomorrow morning. You won't even have a roof over your head to house Lily. I walked toward the exit without looking back once. As I reached the door, Ethan's broken voice drifted from behind me. Clara, did you ever love me? I paused at the door. I didn't turn around. 15 years ago, a boy put a gray scarf around a crying 14-year-old girl and told her she had a home. I said softly. I loved that boy with every drop of my blood. I pulled open the door. But that boy died 3 years ago in Cabo. And I don't give charity to strangers. By 4:45 p.m., the signed acquisition contract was delivered to my desk. Ethan had signed away his life's work for $1 single. That evening, I attended a high-end charity gala at the Palace Hotel in San Francisco. Bennett Capital was the primary sponsor, and as senior VP, I was the guest of honor. I wore a floor-length emerald green satin gown, my neck adorned with a simple, breathtaking diamond choker. Society photographers swarmed around me there, flashes lighting up the red carpet. At 9 p.m., a commotion broke out near the entrance. Lily stepped into the ballroom, wearing a flashy pink designer dress that looked utterly out of place at a black tie gala. She was covered in gaudy jewelry, clutching a glass of champagne. She had followed Ethan to San Francisco, using his credit card to stay at a 5-star hotel. She had heard that Ethan was securing an investment, and she had come to celebrate. When she saw me standing in the center of the room, surrounded by billionaires and city officials, her champagne glass almost slipped from her hand. Clara. Lily gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. She rushed through the crowd, ignoring the glares of the high society guests, and marched straight toward me. You're alive? How are you here? Lily demanded, her voice loud and shrill. Ethan told me you ran away to some small town. What kind of game are you playing? The surrounding guests fell silent, watching the scene unfold with quiet amusement. I turned around slowly, taking a sip of my sparkling water, looking at her as if she were a mild inconvenience. Mrs. Vance, I said smoothly. Or should I say, Miss Lily? Since if I remember correctly, your wedding in Cabo was just a ceremony, without any legal papers, wasn't it? Lily's face turned crimson. You bitch. You came back to ruin Ethan's business, didn't you? He's been depressed for 3 years because of you. You ruined our marriage. I didn't ruin your marriage, Lily. I smiled faintly. You did that all by yourself. Speaking of which, I gestured to Maya, who stood beside me. Maya immediately pulled a tablet out and tapped the screen. Suddenly, the massive LED screens hanging above the ballroom, which were supposed to show charity sponsor videos, flickered. Images began flashing across the giant screens. They were bank statements, wire transfers, and surveillance photos. Photos of Lily kissing a younger man at a luxury resort in Miami 6 months ago. Bank records showing she had transferred over $2 million from Ethan's personal account into the young man's private account. And most damning of all, a certified medical record from a top hospital in Chicago from 10 years ago, clearly stating that Lily had never had cancer or any terminal illness. She had fabricated the entire medical diagnosis to manipulate Ethan into giving her money. Gasps erupted across the ballroom. Guests began pulling out their phones, snapping photos of the screens. Lily stared at the screens in utter horror, her body shaking like a leaf in the wind. No, this is fake. This is all fake, she screamed, trying to cover the screen with her hands, looking around frantically. Ethan, save me. Right on cue, the heavy doors of the ballroom pushed open. Ethan walked in, flanked by 2 police officers and a legal team from Bennett Capital. He was no longer wearing his corporate suit. He wore a plain, dark jacket, his eyes dead and hollow. It's not fake, Lily. Ethan's voice echoed through the silent ballroom. He walked over, stopping in front of her. I found the offshore accounts this afternoon while signing the corporate audit with Bennett Capital. Ethan said softly, his voice devoid of any emotion. You never loved me. You just used my guilt to fund your lifestyle for 10 years. Ethan, baby, listen to me. Lily dropped to her knees, grabbing his pants leg, crying hysterically. I was scared. I was afraid you would leave me for Clara. I did it because I loved you. Ethan slowly pulled his leg back, letting her hands fall into the dirt. I gave up the only woman who ever truly loved me for a lie, Ethan said, looking down at her with pure, unadulterated disgust. Officer, she is the one involved in the wire fraud and asset concealment with Chloe Miller. The 2 police officers stepped forward, pulling Lily up and clicking heavy steel handcuffs around her wrists. Lily Miller, you are under arrest for grand larceny, wire fraud, and conspiracy, the officer announced sternly. Lily kicked and screamed as she was dragged out of the ballroom, her expensive pink dress torn, her makeup smudged into a terrifying ruin. Ethan, save me. Ethan, you promised to take care of me. Her shrill screams faded down the long marble hallway until there was nothing left but silence. The charity gala continued, but Ethan remained standing in the center of the hall, looking utterly lost among the sea of tuxedos and evening gowns. He turned his head slowly, his gaze landing on me. I stood under the grand crystal chandelier, glowing, powerful and completely out of his reach. Ethan walked toward me, step by heavy step, as if carrying the weight of the entire world on his shoulders. The security guards moved to block him, but I raised a hand, stopping them. Ethan stopped 3 feet away from me. She lied to me for 10 years, Clara, Ethan whispered, tears welling up in his hollow eyes. 10 years. I thought I was saving her, but I was just destroying you. That was your choice, Ethan, I said calmly. Nobody forced you to listen to her. Nobody forced you to create that group chat. Nobody forced you to let your sister and Chloe treat me like trash. I was blind. Ethan covered his face, sobbing openly in front of the entire room of elites. I thought you would always be there. I thought no matter what I did, you loved me too much to leave. And that was your biggest mistake. I looked at him, my voice soft but piercing, like an ice pick. You thought my love was a permanent safety net. You thought, because I had no family, I had no choice but to rely on you. You used my vulnerability as a weapon to keep me quiet while you gave everything I deserved to another woman. Ethan fell to his knees. Right there, on the polished marble floor of the Palace Hotel, in front of San Francisco's highest society, the former CEO of Vance Tech dropped to his knees. Before me. Clara, please. He wept, reaching out his trembling hands, trying to touch the hem of my emerald dress. Take the company. Take everything I own. I'll work for you as a driver, a clerk, anything. Just give me one more chance. Let me be your family again. I took a slow step back, dodging his hands cleanly, exactly as I had done 3 years ago in that apartment. I don't need a family built on charity and betrayal, Ethan, I said, looking down at him without a single trace of pity or hatred in my heart. I have built my own home, and it has no room for you. I turned to Mr. Bennett, who walked over with a warm, approving smile. Let's go, Mr. Bennett, I said smoothly. The air in here has gotten quite foul. After you, Vice President Reed, Mr. Bennett replied warmly. As I walked toward the exit, my high heels clicking rhythmically against the floor, I heard Ethan's broken, agonizing wail echoing behind me. It was the exact same sound I had heard 3 years ago in the rain. Only this time, I didn't look back. 1 month later, the restructuring of Vance Tech was completed. Rebranded as Bennett Reed Technologies, the company's stock bounced back, surging by 200%. Within its first week on the Nasdaq, Chloe Miller was arrested at the airport in Mexico and extradited back to face charges of embezzlement and tax evasion. She was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Audrey Vance lost her house, her car, and her social status. Unable to pay her debts, she was forced to take a job as a night shift janitor at a local shopping mall, living in a cramped basement apartment, completely shunned by the social circle she had once bragged to. And Ethan Vance. He sold his last remaining assets to pay off the remaining personal debts. On a foggy Tuesday morning, I sat in my private limousine outside the San Francisco Municipal Court. Maya handed me a small cardboard box that had been delivered to my office. Earlier that morning, Mr. Vance left this for you before he boarded his train back to his hometown. Maya said softly. I opened the box. Inside lay a folded, faded gray scarf. Beside it was a handwritten note on yellowing paper. Clara, I finally understand what you meant. The 15-year-old boy who put this scarf around you really did die. I killed him with my own arrogance, selfishness, and stupidity. I am going back to the small town where we grew up. I took a job as a high school math teacher. I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I will never bother your life again. Thank you for loving me for 15 years. And I am sorry for ruining the only real home we ever had. Goodbye, Clara. Ethan. I looked at the gray scarf for a long moment. 15 years of memories, the birthday cakes, the sushi dinners, the promises made in tiny rented apartments, the tears, the blood, and the rain all condensed into this single piece of faded wool. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I didn't even feel triumphant. All I felt was a deep, tranquil, absolute peace. I rolled down the window of the limousine. The cool San Francisco fog rushed into the car, refreshing and clean. I held the gray scarf out the window, letting go of my fingers. The wind caught the scarf, swirling it up into the fog, carrying it far, far away, until it disappeared completely into the vast, bright horizon. I rolled up the window, turned to Maya, and smiled. Head to the airport, Maya, I said softly, my voice filled with endless strength and freedom. We have a new acquisition to finalize in New York. Yes, Vice President Reed. The car smoothly merged into the bustling highway, driving straight toward the rising sun.